I want to welcome everybody again, all our Bulldog friends and family members and fans out there, to another edition of Noontime with the Bulldogs, which is sponsored by Mako Medical. And a huge shout out to Chad Price, who's CEO of that company. They have continued to work very diligently with testing through COVID, and huge Bulldog sponsors of ours. So we want to say thank you. We are in for a treat today because we have as our guest Jim Nantz, who I've had the privilege of meeting and spending some time with as a member of the men's basketball committee. And he and I both have a mutual friend here in town, Rick Lasavito. So a shout out to Rick for helping to coordinate this. Jim, I want to open this up. I know you're a great storyteller, and I've obviously done my homework and have followed your career. You have to share with our Bulldogs, you knew as an 11-year-old what you really wanted to do. And I've heard this story. I never get tired of hearing it, but would you share a little bit? You know, we know you're from North Carolina, but as an 11-year-old, you knew what you really wanted to do. Give us a little bit of that story.
Well, first off, Janet, thank you for having me. It's great to be reunited with you. I'm grateful to my wonderful friend, Rick Lasavita, who's immersed there in the Asheville community and the smartest guy I've ever known in sports television. Has helped my career in so many ways, and so many others that still work there today. But yeah, I feel like I'm the most fortunate guy in the world because every day I wake up living out the childhood dream. It sounds like I'm making up good copy, like I said, the right thing to say, but it's well documented within my family that I've been saying that since I was a little boy, raised in Charlotte, that I wanted to work specifically for CBS. I didn't just want to be a sports broadcaster. I wanted to be a storyteller. And I looked at CBS more than the other places. And by the way, I was truly smitten with ABC because there were a lot of my heroes that were working over there, and the way they broadcast golf and the Olympics. Lasavita was a part of that ABC golden era. But I liked the way CBS presented the Masters. And I wanted if I could write my own future out and somebody would like listen to me, I wanted to be in Augusta. I wanted to be there telling the stories of the Masters tournament. And I wanted to work for CBS Sports. I love the way they presented the NFL when I was a young boy. Summerall and Brookshire, later on it became Summerall and Madden. I just was completely hooked. And fortunately for me, with a lot of hard work and that intersection of hard work and effort and dreams and all that, it came together for me just a few years out of college. Went to the University of Houston, and I got the chance to come to New York and audition. And I won that audition back in 1985. And I've been at CBS ever since, 37th year now.
Well, there's a little more to that story, so I'm going to have to ask you about this. And I've heard it before, so I know it has to be true. You're obviously a golfer, student athlete at University of Houston. They're hosting a golf tournament. You and your buddies, one of your couple of your roommates, Freddie Couples and some others, you go to this golf tournament and you decide, tell that part of the story, how you really got your first job working.
Well, we were at the Houston Open, which was being broadcast by NBC. And my three roommates throughout school, there were four of us that lived together in a dorm room. They all eventually would play on the PGA Tour. They dreamt of being professional golfers. In Freddie's case, it was all about winning the Masters. And all I ever talked about was this obsession with working for CBS so that maybe one day I could broadcast the Masters. Anyway, we're sophomores. We're at the Houston Open at the Woodlands, and we're walking by the 17th hole and look off to the right, and there is the NBC compound, all these trailers and trucks, says NBC splashed across the side. And somebody said, hey, one of the boys said, you ought to go over and ask them for a job. And I said, you're right, I should. So persistence and trying to make a moment, whatever. I went over to the security guard. It was all roped off. And I said, excuse me, sir. I said, I'm Jim Nantz. I'm here to speak with Don Ohlmeyer. And he said, okay, is this a planned meeting? He'll know what this is about. So off he goes to go find Don Ohlmeyer. My buddies say, who's Don Ohlmeyer? I said, come on, guys. He's the big guy over at over at NBC, used to work with Rick over at ABC, Rick LaCivita. And I said, he's the big cheese, man. He runs NBC Sports. He produces their golf. You got to know these things. As I was sitting there acting like a big shot, all of a sudden I saw the security guard walking back, and there was a man with him. It dawned on me for the first time that that might be Don Ohlmeyer. I didn't know what he looked like. And next thing I know, it is Don standing right there by the entrance. And he said, hey, I'm looking for Jim Nantz. And I said, yes, sir, that's me. He said, how can I help you? And I said, well, these are my buddies, and we're on the Houston golf team, and I'm studying communications, and I would love to come work for you guys. So he said, well, what do you have in mind? And Freddie says, he wants to be an announcer. Well, that's good. He said, what would you like to do this weekend? He said, put him on the air. And I knew that was a little aggressive. And he said, well, we have all the announcers we need, but if you really like to work this weekend, he said, I could get you a job as a runner. I can't pay you anything, but you could help all of my announcers get to their towers where they're going to broadcast from. They have to park all the way up at the clubhouse. We're down here at 17. I need somebody to drive them, wait for them in the parking lot. When one arrives, you pull up to their car, put them in the cart, and bring them back to the compound. They'll sit around for a couple of hours. We'll go through some meetings, and then I like you to shuttle them out to their whole locations. So I thought, if I can't be on the air, this has got to be like the next best thing. I get to rub shoulders with all these big shots, and that's what I did. And it's called making your own break, I guess. It was a little bit on a lark, but I thank Don Ohlmeyer every day. I thank you, sir, for this opportunity. And at the end of it, he came back and said, what are you doing next week? I said, well, we've got finals and all of this. He says, we're doing a golf tournament up in Dallas, the Byron Nelson tournament. If you'd like to come up and work for us, I'll get you a job there and I can pay you. So I, of course, on the spot, couldn't have thanked them enough. And I accepted. And that following week, I drove up to Dallas. I had a little bit more of a responsibility in my job, and NBC paid me $20 a day. And they even paid me on Friday when we weren't on the air. And I got to broadcast, sit next to the broadcasters as they were calling the action, and have a front row seat to something I longed to do down the road.
Well, I love that story, because in college athletics, and as our Bulldogs know, that persistence and sometimes just, taking that chance and how it can lead to opportunities. Some of our friends might not know, though, you got your first job, I guess you were on radio, and then went to Salt Lake City, kind of young. And then give part of the story how you went from Salt Lake City to this interview in New York, and lo and behold, you're going to end up at the Masters.
Well, I graduated college off of that opportunity to work for NBC the next week in Dallas. I called radio stations in Houston. I hope some of the athletes that are trying to figure out a way to create a job, new ways of thinking out of the box. This is a little bit of a template, but I called back to the radio stations in Houston and told them, I'm up in Dallas. I'm working on the broadcast with NBC. Would you guys like some radio reports? I'll be happy to give you at the end of the day, like a 30-second script that you can run in your sportscasts on the radio. 2 stations took me up. I didn't have any real training, but I created an opportunity there to make contacts. And when I got done with that golf tournament, one of them, the CBS affiliate, KTRH, hired me. And I ended up working there the rest of my college career. And it ended up that I would be anchoring on the CBS TV affiliate in Houston while I was still in college. My junior and senior year, I was now on the air in a top 10 market in the country. And, I created some opportunity. And I went to Salt Lake because I thought, again, it was a good chance for me to widen out my experiences and to do some games. I knew that to really make it to CBS, I had to have game experience, not just anchoring experience. So I got to go to Utah at the age of 23, again, the CBS station there. And I called the Utah Jazz games in the NBA. And BYU, Brigham Young University, football and basketball on TV, valuable experience. And lo and behold, 2 years after being there, I got a call one day from CBS out of the blue saying they'd been taping my broadcasts and for the last month, and they wanted to bring me back to New York to audition. They liked what they saw. So I flew back to New York the next day after getting that phone call. I went to New York and auditioned with 4 others, and I ended up being the one they chose. I was just 3.5 years removed from college.
So fast forward through the years, we're going to get to some real storytelling now. Obviously, the voice of the NFL, March Madness, the Masters golf tournament. I mean, any of us that are in any kind of sports kind of person have watched those, listened to those. So I'm gonna kind of start. Let's start with the NFL first. Obviously you met a lot of people. You have, and most recently this weekend, we've seen some great NFL football. Tell us a couple stories about maybe a game or two or someone you met that we wouldn't have just seen on CBS, but you're giving us that inside look at NFL football. So give us a couple of your favorite stories from doing NFL football.
Well, I'm coming off a game just 48 hours ago, not even. The people are saying might be the greatest game of all time. So I work with Tony Romo, which is just a great thrill for me. We're close friends. We have a blast watching these games unfold, being in the arena together, preparing together. And I mean, I'm still kind of a little bit, if you will, trying to come out of that blue funk after you do something that was that big. The ratings came out just before our call, and it peaked at 51 million Americans were watching at the end of that game. Basically, a little less than 1/6 of the entire country was watching that game, which was just breathtaking the way it went back and forth between Kansas City and Buffalo. But, I get to know all the players and coaches as part of the preparation. I've known them for years. It was a thrill early on to meet your idols. Like, take a guy like Roger Staubach. Roger Staubach was my favorite football player growing up. Of course, as time would go on, I would meet Roger Staubach, and I'd go to Dallas and oftentimes have a chance to even have lunch or dinner. He's a friend now. And when you're a kid growing up, you can't imagine one day you're going to one day know these people on a personal basis. I find being around the league, the work effort is what really strikes me, is how much goes into a 3-hour performance. The game is the performance, but is so deeper than that and so nuanced. Hopefully the athletes can relate to this. Take Tom Brady. I just, the way it's worked out through his career, I've done now over 100 of his games, almost a third of Tom's career. I've been there to document. People have no idea what his Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, his diet, his exercise, his sleep patterns, all of this is calibrated and factored in to how he can best play on a Sunday afternoon for 3 hours. I'm blown away by the nuance that Tom has put into being the best, arguably the greatest of all time. And I've had a front row seat to see so much of that unfold. That position, I'm smitten by that position. It's the hardest position, I think, in sport. Your franchise rides more on the ability of your quarterback than maybe any other position in sport. And I'm really excited about the young guys that I see coming in now. I had 2 of them on Sunday night with Patrick and Josh, Mahomes and Allen. Just awesome talents and great people. They both have been to my home out in California. I've played golf with them, gotten to know, in both cases, I've gotten to know extended family members. And I see how driven they are to be great, not just to be good, not just to make it to the NFL, which is a massive achievement on its own, but to be truly legendary, to make a mark in your career. I know Josh well enough to know that performance on Sunday, which was just a virtuoso performance, completing throws on 4th and 13 to keep him in the game, racing up and down the field in desperation and all this and that. I'm sure he hasn't come out of it mentally yet. That was a hard one. He's crushed by the fact that his season's over. This was a team good enough to have gone all the way and won a Super Bowl. And I kept saying going to that game, who is going to lose this game? It's going to be hard to imagine that Mahomes or Josh, one of these two, the Chiefs and the Bills, are going to be left behind. But, once they get out of it, once he's able to make sense or process the fact, talking about Josh Allen, that it's over, you won't believe how soon he'll be back to preparing for next year. He's not going to wait for camp to open in July. Janet, he's going to start that process within the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, he's going to be preparing for something that will lead to a playoff game next January, whether it's just the way he's going to work out, the film work he's going to do. I mean, these guys put in the time. They do not mail it in. They never do. They're driven to succeed. They're obsessed with the idea of trying to find every possible way to be better at what they do.
Well, I think that resilience that we see, what you're talking about, bouncing back and starting preparing is a great lesson for all of us. You talk about preparation. I'm just curious. The players are preparing, the coaches are preparing. What's your preparation for a game like that? Like the time, what do you do to get ready? Because you obviously have to know a lot of information.
Well, most people think you actually just walk into the booth and just start talking. They truly do. And that's okay. I wouldn't expect them to know what it looks like behind the scenes, but it's an ongoing process for most of the week. Now, this is a little bit of a different week. We had this game Sunday night. It went long. I jumped on a plane when the game ended and flew to Brooklyn, New York, where I had to be involved yesterday in a commercial shoot for the NCAA tournament, the March Madness Capital One ads with Spike Lee and Charles Barkley and Samuel L. Jackson. That was yesterday, just hours after calling that game. I wasn't probably ready to do that. My acting skills leave a lot to be desired, but again, I'm inspired by working with people like Sam and Charles, and Spike is the director on these spots. And he's so great to work with. He's so giving of his time and coaching you and making you feel like you're comfortable. And, the nuance of acting I have no answers to that, but I always tell him one thing: show me how you want me to look, what it should look like, and I'll mime it. I'll just imitate you. And it works very gently with me. And we have a great time. And I think people will get a kick out of it when they see it during the NCAA tournament. But that's a different week. Normally Monday, I'm at home recovering and reading and following up on some phone calls after the game. And today is the day I get down to business. As soon as we finish this today, I'm going to be working on my big spotting boards, shot boards that will be in front of me for the entire game. I've got Kansas City and Cincinnati, by the way, for the AFC Championship. And I just had that matchup on January the 2nd in Cincinnati. And it was a down to the wire, last second kick to win it for the Bengals. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at that game again, because we just had that broadcast. The matchups are the same. The individual matchups are the same. And then I began the process of reading. I got a clip file that came in this morning that was about 145 pages. I'll read through that. There'll be another pile coming through later today. And every day this week, there'll be 100 pages of research material or more that'll come in. I'll read everything. I'll read everything that's written that I can find about this game. And then come Thursday, we're going to meet with the Bengals, the head coach, the coordinators, the quarterback, and a few other players. And then Friday, we'll be with the Chiefs. And Saturday and Sunday, we're on site in Kansas City, and we call the game for the winner to go to the Super Bowl. Now, this is a different week, I will tell you, Janet, because just to throw a little something extra in the mix, this weekend happens to be our season premiere of the PGA Tour from Torrey Pines in San Diego, the Farmers Insurance Open. I'm going to call that also. I'm going to call that from inside Arrowhead Stadium. It's a Friday night on CBS, Saturday night, 5:00. I think both nights on the network, about 6.5 hours of coverage total. And I'm going to call that from the football stadium. So I've got to get on top of that too. I haven't done a golf event in 5 months, since August. So I've got to get my golf voice ready to be dropped into that dramatic whisper.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's talk about the Masters. What an iconic event, the Masters. Tell us one or two of your favorite memories from calling the Masters.
All right, I'll give you my number one.
Okay.
How do you do this? You go to school, the coach has 7 freshmen in front of him. We don't know one another. We know their names, but we're not sure who's who. And the coach says, "Boys, welcome to University of Houston. We're here to win national championships. You're my freshman class. We just won the championship in the spring for the 13th time." He said, "I'd like you all to stand up one at a time Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your goal is in life. That's all I want to hear. He looked at me and said, Jimmy, you're first. I stood up. I had no problem speaking in front of people for whatever reason. I said, I'm Jimmy Nantz. My dad was Jim Nantz always. Changed it to Jim when I got on TV because I want to sound a little more seasoned. I'm Jimmy Nantz. I went to high school in Colts Neck, New Jersey, and I want to work for CBS one day. I want to broadcast the Masters in the NFL. I sat down. The fourth guy stood up bashfully and said, I'm Fred Couples. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I want to one day, I want to win the Masters. Basically, the coach said, okay, well, you two guys are going to room together. You both want to end up in your careers going to the same place. So you guys can go figure that out. And Blaine McAllister, who won 5 times on the tour, and John Horn, who played 2 years on the tour, they were a part of that great group. And we fed off of one another, by the way, a lot of positive energy. And yeah, the Masters, how do I beat this? I'm sitting in my dorm room practicing the green jacket presentation with Fred. He wants to win it. I want to be there to present it. We used to practice it and tape it into a little tape deck, little audio cassette deck. And we used to practice it, pretending we're big shots. And then one day, April the 12th, 1992, he won the Masters, and I was there to give him the green jacket and conduct the interview, just as we had rehearsed in college.
Wow.
So that's how do you beat that?
You can't beat that. I'm actually got some tears in my eyes because I love those stories, because I think it, one, reminds us not only to keep dreaming, but you can work towards these goals, and hopefully a lot of them come true. The Masters is such a wonderful event, and especially since I'm from South Carolina, so I'm very familiar with the Masters and seeing that event. I want to transition a little bit. You mentioned Charles Barkley, and you're filming already, getting the commercials ready for March Madness. And you and I both have been there. I've been honored to be on that court when they start playing One Shining Moment. There are so many shining moments with March Madness. Our Bulldog fans might not know this. Part of what we do at March Madness, we have these have had salutes where you bring the teams in, and you obviously host that for us and MC it. I've seen this passion you have for the student athletes and the coaches at March Madness and how you interview them. Give us a couple shining moments from March Madness that stand out in your mind, whether it was a play on the court or an interview with a student athlete or coach that you really kind of stick out in your mind.
I'm with you. That one shining moment, the theme song of the tournament in many respects, it just gets me every time. We've been playing it on our air since 1987, when I first led to it at a Final Four in New Orleans, where we'll be this year for the men's basketball tournament. And it's a feel-good piece. And I have now this tradition that I share it on the court with my oldest daughter. She'll fly in for the Final Four, and we watch it arm in arm. And it's our daddy-daughter experience, very personally special in my life to have that moment. But the tournament, we of course lost the 2020 tournament to COVID, but I've had 35 tournaments, 5 as the host, 30 as the play-by-play voice. And it's just almost impossible to pin down one great moment. I mean, you've got buzzer beaters like Chris Jenkins from Villanova hitting the shot in 2016 to beat North Carolina. You got the highs of that. You got the lows of Chris Webber calling timeout in 93 in New Orleans when Michigan lost to North Carolina. It's a feel-good event, though. I mean, year in and year out, the whole country is kind of bonded together by it. Everybody's got their brackets. Everybody's into it. Last year, to have my alma mater play in the Final Four, Houston, meant a ton to me. Now we got walloped by the eventual champions in Baylor, but I was just really proud that they made it to the Final Four, because in many respects, the basketball program at Houston, in many respects, really did launch my career, more than that fateful meeting out at the Houston Open. The golf coach knew the basketball coach, Hall of Famer Guy Lewis. and said, I got this kid, Jimmy Nantz. He wants to work for CBS one day. Can you involve him at all in your basketball program? So the coach said, sure, he can come hang out with us and he can be our PA announcer, the public address announcer. So I did. And that's really the first work I did with a microphone, was talking into the microphone and introducing the lineups and doing all of that and sitting at midcourt. And that eventually led to me hosting Guy's TV show. My first foray into TV was through Guy. And I felt so indebted to it that the first basketball scholarship ever fully endowed in University of Houston history was endowed by me and my amigos, my roommates. The three golfers endowed the first basketball scholarship in Houston history. We had a guy on the floor in March, Marcus Sasser, who was one of our top players to get us to the Final Four, was in school on our scholarship. And we were really proud of that. We later went back and endowed the first golf scholarship in the history of the school. So I'm very indebted to Houston. And that meant a lot to me, seeing them play in the Final Four. And maybe they'll be back this year, ranked 7th in the country right now.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that story about giving back. That's something we always try to encourage our student athletes as they leave us, to remember somebody's always helped you along the way. And what can you do to give back to your university? And obviously, you're passionate about Houston. I'm going to change the topic just a little bit. You've got a book that you wrote, Always by My Side, about your father. And I know that's very special to you. And out of that, you also you got a cause, a passion about something because of your father. You want to share that a little bit?
Sure. If the cause is Alzheimer's, and trying to find a way to crack the code to find eventually a treatment that works, that one day may lead to a cure. My father suffered for 13 years from Alzheimer's. And when we wrote this book about my dad, called Always by My Side, I didn't know what kind of reaction there would be to it. But fortunately, the very first week it made the New York Times bestseller list, was an instant bestseller, and ended up being, if it was a sports category book, it was the #1 selling sports book of 2008. Anyway, what I found was the book wasn't about sports. Sports was in the backdrop. It was about a family coping with a leader of the family suffering, and all of us rallying around, particularly my mother and sister, all of us North Carolina people from the start, but rallying around Dad and trying to make his life something that he could cope with and we all could cope with, and keeping his dignity intact. So the book ended up connecting with people that had a loved one suffering.
Right.
And it still follows me to this day in such a beautiful way. People mention it every week. I hear multiple times about Always by My Side. And it's been now 14 years since the book came out. Anyway, I realized as the book was catching fire and an audience and the whole thing, I needed to have my dad's voice heard. I have the platform. My voice is heard every week on the air, whether you like it or not. Sorry, folks, I'm coming into your living room. But my dad his voice was never heard. He was never interviewed. He was never on television or anything like that. But my voice is his voice, Janet. I have the exact same pitch, sound, everything comes from my dad. My love of people, my love of sport. It all came from Dad. And I thought, what better opportunity than the platform I have, being on national television, to be able to go find a way to raise the money and the awareness to create the greatest research institute that the world has ever seen, and do it in Houston, the home to the Texas Medical Center, where the first heart transplant took place at the DeBakey Heart Institute, where the MD Anderson Cancer Center is located. They need to have the top Alzheimer's Research Institute in the world. So I went over to Houston Methodist Hospital, had a meeting with them, and said, what would it take? I'll write the first check of many and seed it, and I can help you raise tens of millions of dollars, and we can build this. We can recruit the best researchers and scientists and doctors in the world. And we're now at year 11. And I'm sure people would say it's all subjective, which is the best of this, because there's many wonderful research institutes around the world. But I know there would be a lot of people who would tell you that the Nantz Center, named for my dad, not for me, as a tribute to my father, the Nantz Center, I believe, really is leading the world in cutting edge research, trial programs. We're in 9 trials at the moment, and really aggressively, like everything else I've done in my life, you set your mind to it and you figure out a way to get it done.
Wow.
And that's the mantra, that's the mission. And look, it's a hard world to make advancements in. Alzheimer's has never had an answer. There was a drug approved last year, a little bit of controversy behind the drug, but it was FDA approved. We ran the trial for that. We were one of the few places in the world that administered it. So that is, you might call it giving back. You know, I don't know. To me, it's what I'm supposed to do. It's in my heart to find answers and to find ways to win. And this one to win would be the most important victory of my life, is to know that our people at a place named for my father found a way to defeat an opponent that defeated my dad. And I believe we're going to get there sooner than people.
That is awesome. Well, I've got my colleague, David Jander. We got a couple questions. And for those of you listening in, if you want to type in a question in the chat, please do. David, you want to come on and ask a couple questions? And Jim, we want to be mindful of his time. He's got to get ready for some golf and football games this weekend.
Absolutely. Donna has smartly stopped my video because nobody wants to see me. But Jim, you can't see I'm wearing purple because tonight is our We Back Pat game, which is in support of the Pat Summit Foundation and Alzheimer's. And while it's not a Jim Nantz collection Vineyard Vines, which, by the way, any care package or modeling you want me to do in Asheville, you let me know. But Jim, I would love to follow up on Janet's question that she just asked you. When we tune in Sunday at 3 o'clock to watch that game, explain your opening.
Explain the opening?
Yeah, your first comment and why you do that.
Oh, you're talking about Hello Friends?
Yes.
Yes. I was thinking before I actually say that, there's a few shots. Thank you, David. There you are. We wanted to see you. Come on, man. Handsome guy. So we have, we'll come on the air with, I'm sure, Joe Burrow coming out of the tunnel, Patrick Mahomes coming out of the tunnel, and I'll probably say something about, 2 bright stars are one step from the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow and the Bengals, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and it's coming up next on CBS. They'll go into a tease. Then they'll go into the animation. I'll do some scene setting it up. The crowd will be going nuts, and then they'll come to the booth, and I'll look into the lens, and I'll say, "Hello, friends, Jim Nantz along with Tony Romo." And that line is tied to what Janet just raised a moment ago. It was a way for me to communicate with my dad as his health was failing, as his memory was slowly disappearing from view. I wanted him to know that when I came on the air, I was thinking of him. And he had enough at that point, synapses, I think, connecting to where he knew what I was doing. It was 2002. And I told him, I said, "Dad, I'm going to be opening the show this weekend. I'm going to be in Minnesota. And I'm going to say, I'm going to look into that lens. And the first thing I'm going to say when they come on camera will be, 'Hello, friends.' And that's for you because you have nothing but friends." So I did it that one day. And later that night, a friend of mine called and said, "I heard you say that on the air. That really was good. What is that about?" And I told him the background. I was doing it for Dad. He said, "You ought to do that all the time. It sounds like you." So I did it the next time I was on the air and every show thereafter. And my dad's been gone now since 2008. So unfortunately, it's a long time, and I miss him, still miss him so much. And I had a dream about him last night that felt so real. I woke up with tears. But when I look into that lens, which is not giving me any feedback, just a camera lens, you look into it, you try to communicate with it. It's a little hard just to communicate and try to be conversational to an object. But when I look at the lens and I say, "Hello, friends," it relaxes me. And for that flicker of a second, I think of my dad, and it takes the jitters and the nervous energy out of it that you still get just to get the broadcast started. And it makes me feel like my dad, I'm channeling him, and he's watching over me, and on we go with the show. I had no idea after a while that people would pick up on it. It didn't take long, but now it goes with me everywhere and it follows me. People come up and say, "Hey, can you say 'Hello, friends,' or can you write 'Hello, friends' and sign it?" And most people don't know the backstory, but it was not ever an attempt to try to have some clever signature line or anything like that. It had 100% just an attempt to try to get a son to communicate from afar with his dad that he loves so much.
How about another question or two, David?
So Jim, our good friend Rick, wants to know how a kid from Colts Neck, New Jersey ends up mediating a conversation between two American presidents and what you learned from that experience.
Well, it's more than a conversation. So going to school in Houston, I got to know President Bush and then the whole Bush family really well. This was not an entrance into friendship through politics or fundraising or anything like that. It was totally about sports, and that family's love of sport and their excitement and support for a local kid coming out of the University of Houston who made it to the network. So it didn't take long before I got hired by CBS back in the 80s. And 41, as he was always called, to separate from his son, who later became president, the 43rd president. 41's office reached out and said that the president's really proud of you, what you've meant to the city of Houston, and he'd like to meet you sometime. So we did get together for a round of golf over the holidays. This is back in the 80s. He was a sitting president at that time. He was elected in 88 after 8 years as a vice president. Anyway, it spawned from there into a beautiful friendship, a mentorship, really, I think it would be the way to categorize it. And through him, I got to meet so many of the most fascinating people in the world, one of whom would be President Clinton. Now, in 2004, there was this tsunami that hit Southeast Asia over the holidays of 2004, terrible devastation. At that point, George W. Bush was the president, and he appointed his father and President Clinton to lead a worldwide fundraising initiative called the Bush-Clinton Initiative. And together, those two presidents globetrotted and raised $1.5 billion for relief. Somewhere along the line, as time marched on, they became very close friends. And I was at the Final Four in 2005 in St. Louis when I got a call from President Bush asking me if I would consider doing a favor for him. And that was, he wanted to get together on a social basis. He and President Clinton had been talking, and they were enjoying each other's company so much. They wanted to get together and just hang out, play golf, have dinners, and, behind the scenes, nothing in public view. And he said, the short of it is, I'm asking a favor. Would you consider being our intermediary? We figure we might need one guy in case we get kind of stumped and don't know where the conversation should go. As you can tell, I have no problem conversing. So I was their fly on the wall intermediary, is what they called it. And I got to serve that role several times, starting in the summer of 2005, where we met in Kennebunkport and had glorious dinners and rounds of golf and trips out on the boat. And it happened the next year. It happened several times over and over again. We'd get together. And again, I just got to be the guy along for the ride. And it became like three guys getting together on a road trip. It just so happens two of them were former presidents and one guy's just calling a bunch of sporting events. But President Bush died a couple of years ago on a Friday night, November 30th. And I was in Atlanta getting ready to call a Falcons game against the Ravens, and I was crushed, and I knew it was coming. The next morning, I'm sitting at a meeting with the Baltimore Ravens and their coach, John Harbaugh. I kept feeling my phone vibrating in my pocket that I thought, well, might be my wife. It's an emergency. I looked down and in my phone, it was, specially encoded. It was 42, meaning the 42nd president, President Clinton. So I excused myself from the conversation and went back into one of the training rooms. It was isolated. And I called President Clinton, and for 30 minutes, the two of us sat back with tears and talked about how fortunate we were to know the great man that is 41. And, I love that story as time goes on, David, because we are so polarized as a country now, and there's so much division. And here were two political rivals that ran against each other, one of whom defeated the other. President Clinton beat President Bush of a second term. And yet I saw love between them. I saw human respect and dignity. I saw two men that, all right, they had some philosophical difference, but their love of country was undeniable. They both had in their heart the same desire to serve their country the best way that they knew how. And I got to see it. I got to see love and kindness and dignity. And I got to share a moment like that with President Clinton, who I still hear from, about losing a friend. And you tell that story today and you think, that was possible? Was that 100 years ago? No, that was just a few years ago. That's who we have the potential to be, America at its best. We might have our differences of opinion, but we respect people and we don't tear them down. You know, Janet was saying something a little bit earlier. I just wanted to finish the thought about it. How fortunate I was to be surrounded by believers when I was in school, people that believed in me. So if you have kids that are on this call right now who are in the dorms together or whatever, I know it's a different time and age, and social media makes it hard to be always upbeat and positive and not snarky and tearing people down. That would have been so foreign to us in our time. I do think that the positivity was a feeding process for all of us to achieve. I think that as many times we told Fred he was going to win the Masters one day, I think it had a lot to do with the success in his Hall of Fame career. I got to present him into the Hall of Fame. I know that my ability to make it to the network that I had longed for since I was 11 years old and made it when I was 26, I know I would not have gotten there if my running mates did not believe in that as a possibility and constantly remind me with an earnest and supportive and genuine, heartfelt comment about how much they believed in me. Point of it is, the more we can be positive with people, believing in people, the better off everything works out for everyone. Mutual respect. I really believe in it so strongly. My life has been really centered around that. A positive home, a loving, positive home of reinforcement. And I know you're doing that at UNC Asheville. I know you're doing that with your athletes there. I know you're doing that through all these Bulldog programs. Believing in young people, giving them a chance and positively feeding them all the time. Good thoughts, great thoughts, positive beliefs that you really are on their side. It'll go a long, long way to making them better and making us better as a society.
Well, Jim, that's a great ending point for you. I'm going to have you on again in the future. I want to keep you on schedule because I know your assistant said you had something else. So
I am fine. I've got time for another question or two.
Good. Let's go then. Let's keep going. Go ahead, David. Fire away. I just want to be mindful. Let's give it.
You're fine.
Questions in there, and then we're going to introduce you to our head men's basketball coach who just hopped on.
Love to.
Jim, which of the sports is the most challenging for you to cover and why?
I have three primary sports, the NFL, which I have one game to do this Sunday. And then I have golf that goes on and off from January through August. And then I have the NCAA basketball tournament. I would say the hardest to do, the most challenging one that has the most work behind the scenes would be the NFL. It's just you're talking about a roster size of 45 to 55 players, coaches, coordinators, et cetera, and it's 3 hours of intense. Every play could be the most important play of the game as you're getting ready to call it. The NCAA tournament is intense too because there's so much tonnage. There's a day that Janet will never forget, the 4-game opening day, first round games. And in our case, we're broadcasting from noon until midnight. And the preparation, try to get to know all the players and their stories. It's intense. But on the air, the golf is, in some ways, is the greatest challenge. You're not feeding off an energy wave. It's more like a fireside chat. And you have long stretches to really lean on your storytelling ability. Walking a player up the 18th on his way to a win. It's not like we're cutting the commercial every 3 minutes. You might have 18 minutes to talk about one subject. And it's golf. You want to be able to deliver this in a way that it's classical storytelling, lyrical in its phrasing and framing of the moment. So I feel like that's the one that defines you of what you've got as far as what you're bringing to the table and your skill set. But the other ones have a lot more preparation, I think. The golf is kind of the same players every year. There's a base of about 80 to 100 guys that don't change over a ton. And I know them all. I know their players, families, and I know their background. A lot of this stuff is compartmentalized in my head. But the bottom line is, David, I love all three. I love all three. I have 3 kids. Somebody says, which one's your favorite sport? Well, if I have a father of 3, it's like asking me which one's my favorite child. You can't answer that. There is no answer.
That's a challenge for athletic directors too. I gotta love all, I call all my children, all 16 of my sports. Jim, we've got our head men's basketball coach, Mike Morell, just hopped on, and Honey Brown, our women's coach, is going to get on also. We want to thank you so much for being on this. And I'm going to turn to Mike for a second. And Jim, you can ask him a question too. Mike Morell, just coming off an overtime win with Drew Pember scoring 41 points. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm having a hard time speaking because I just want you to know, Fred Couples is my favorite athlete ever. I have a picture of Fred Couples in my house. So
I love it.
It's
That's awesome, Mike.
Yeah.
Congrats on the win, man. I know
Thank
your whole background was shocking and everything. And
Thank you.
it's
Yeah.
great to see that you're doing so well. That's wonderful, man.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a great win the other night. Obviously, it was emotional for us because we had lost a few in a row where we were 1 possession games, and was really proud of the guys because I felt like their connectivity was just tremendous when we needed it most. Especially, we were down 7 with about 6 to go, and just really proud of those guys. It's hard to win on the road, and so that's 2 out of 3 we've won on the road. So Radford had a good crowd. They were rambunctious, and so it was good for us. And obviously, we've got a nationally televised game coming up this Thursday night, so we're excited for that, and just really, really proud of our guys. But hey, Jim, can I ask you a question?
Yeah. I'd be honored.
My best friend from high school is Jason Witt. I don't know if so I know Tony a little bit, and
yeah,
and sorry, Janet, I know I'm going off, but do you still get nervous? And if you do you have like a remedy for that? Does that ever go away? Like does experience take that away? And when you get nervous, like before it comes on, before you go into your deal, how do you deal with that?
Well, the answer first off, Coach, is yes, definitely still get the nerves. I'm already feeling, when I start thinking about Sunday, the AFC Championship game and how big that will be. We're coming off of this epic Bills Chiefs game, and we've got to put that game and that broadcast, which felt like maybe the best game I've ever broadcast, maybe our best football broadcast ever. Tony and I both thought that when we left the booth. We got to go restart. We got to go win. We got to go win this game. This is going to be even a bigger audience than what we had on Sunday night. So yeah, I'm already here we are Tuesday. I'm already getting a little bit of butterflies when I start thinking about that day. Just a little nervous energy, and it's going to be a busy day. And when the game ends, I have to find my way from the booth with security down onto the field to present the trophy. And that's always a little bit of a high wire act during a 2-minute commercial break to go from up high onto the field and transition to that role. But I talked about this a little bit before you came on. I have this trigger point, this trigger line. I look into the lens and I say, hello, friends. And it's a tribute to my dad. It relaxes me. It kind of makes me feel like I'm channeling him, and it gets me into the flow of things. And other than that, I think it's a lot like I'm sure you feel as a coach, and Honey can probably vouch for this too. The build up, the anticipation, the film work, the practices you have, what's it going to be like? How good are they going to be? How are they going to play us? This and that. Once you get into the game and the instincts take over, all that nervousness goes away, right? I mean, it goes away. But that nervous feeling, Coach, it's a good feeling. Like, I have a hard time when I shut it down. I work about 47 weeks a year. I go on a vacation. I'm supposed to go and just like chill. It's hard for me to find a comfort level in just relaxing because I'm kind of wired to be always at this level where the next thing's about to happen. So I don't find myself on vacation until like day 4 or 5. I figured out how to relax because I'm just so wired to always be dealing with the nerves and anticipation. And I feed off of it. I love it. Janet, I think we got you on mute. Yep.
Oh, I'm on mute. I said, I think he's trying to join us right now. But Mike, for our Bulldogs too, give us a little preview. We are playing the running Bulldogs on Thursday. And of course, women's basketball's got a game tonight, but talk a little bit about Thursday's game.
Yeah, Jim, I'd like to know how you do that. What do you do when you got 2 Bulldogs facing off against each other?
I've had that. Trust me, I've had that. I've had that with Wildcats before, with like Kentucky and Villanova. It's a mess. Honestly, it's not fun for a broadcaster. So that just ends up being Kentucky and Villanova or whoever else might be. But hey, Coach, are we looking at I know how much the NCAA tournament means, and to win the conference tournament. You feeling pretty good about our Bulldogs having a little chance to be in the dance this year?
Yeah, I do. It's you know how this is, especially at our level, and a lot of things come down to 3 days in March, leading up to that. But that journey across 16 games is what gets you ready for it. And
True.
The ebbs and flows of that. We're a 1-bid league in our league. And so the adversity that we face along the way, we have a choice in how we want to look at that. And just so you know, we lost 2 1 possession games going into our last road win. And trying to figure that out, trying to maneuver through the emotions of that is really the challenge, and still remind yourself it's where you still got 10 games to continue to grow. We've got a really talented team. We've got probably the oldest or one of the oldest teams in the league, which for me, to be able to have that experience is really nice. It's the first time we've really had an old team here, Jim. And when you watch those games courtside in March, not all the time, but experientially usually trumps talent in that time of year. So I really, and I got this from Coach Smart. You've got a choice. You can choose to see the good. You can choose to see the alternative. And so for us, even when we were struggling last week, we got to choose to see the good with these guys. I think especially with the athlete that we coach today. But Gardner Webb's coming up Thursday night. It's on ESPNU. It's the first time that I think national television's been in our gym since 2018. And they've lost 3 in a row, but they share the same league record as we do. So extremely talented. They beat Georgia, an SEC opponent, by 17 on the road.
Wow.
So they've got a very, very good team. But I'm as excited about this group as I have been since I've been here, for sure.
I had Gardner Webb in the tournament a couple of years ago when they played Virginia down in Columbia, South Carolina. And of course, I'm always wondering who's going to be sent where. That's the stuff that Janet and her colleagues figured out. It's just an amazing thing to figure out. But I think your conference tournament champion is going to be going to Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I think our crew, Raft and Grant Hill and I, will be in Greenville.
Oh, that'll be great.
And so I would love to see you there. And here's my thinking behind that. It's going to be, as you know, Coach K's last year. And if Duke merits it, I would think that the committee would send them to Greenville. And I think our crew undoubtedly will be going wherever Duke goes, just on the chance that somewhere along the way, it might be Mike's last game. So who knows, maybe we've got a Duke UNCA little matchup, but I would love to see you guys win that conference tournament. And I would love to be there in Greenville. We're talking like 6 weeks away, calling your game. That would be huge for me.
This athletic director would love that too, trust me.
Yeah.
The only person that would love that more than you all is me. I can assure you that.
Let's give Coach Brown a chance to weigh in. Coach Brown, I know your video's not coming on, but you're on. You got a game tonight that's big game at home, also back Pat game. So tell us a little bit real quick what's happening tonight for our women's team.
And thanks, Janet. And Jim, thanks so much for being on. Really appreciate you taking your time. And
Yeah. Thanks, honey.
and shoot around and not able to hear all of it, but just really excited about tonight. You know, another opportunity. We say this all the time. Like Coach Morell and I talk about it. You practice so much and only have so many game opportunities. So, you know, excited A&P's coming in. Luckily, I've played against them in their building, coached against them as an assistant, but this is the first time our players, because we haven't played them in a few years, are experiencing their type of athleticism. They run 3 different types of presses, you know, just kind of get after you a little bit. So I'm excited about the challenge. I know our players are. We had a great shoot around, great day of prep, and even more excited that we're able to do a We Back Pat game. Pat Summit's, you know, super important to me growing up in Tennessee. I know Coach Morell shares that as well. Just, you know, growing up and seeing the way she did things as a player, you know, trying to be like her or try to study the game and try to treat your players like she did, you know, coach them hard, but love them hard too. And so our proceeds, our staff, myself, we donated to the Pat Summit Foundation in honor for UNC Asheville women's basketball. And we'll be wearing purple tonight for Alzheimer's awareness.
That is awesome, honey. I've recently bought a home in Nashville, so I'm not that far down the road from you guys. We've been living in Pebble Beach, California for over 10 years and never going to sell our home there. We'll still get about 3 months a year in Pebble, but we're in Nashville. And no sooner did we get here in August than I started interfacing with some folks, some great folks from the Pat Summit Foundation. I'm sure you probably crossed paths with Peyton a few times. So Peyton had an event here, asked me to come, and it's a wonderful cause. That's incredible. You guys have even reached in your own pocket to help it. They do a great thing. That foundation's really, for someone that lives, unfortunately, in the Alzheimer's fundraising world, I have great admiration for them. And I think we're going to be interfacing here, hopefully one of these days soon.
That's great news. Well, speaking of you being in Nashville, I'm going to go ahead and give you this open invitation. We'd love for you to come to Asheville, North Carolina. You obviously have a large group of friends here. Play a little golf, kind of enjoy our city. We'd love to have you here and any of your family members with you. I can't thank you enough for joining us. On behalf of all our Bulldogs, you know, we are huge Jim Nantz fans here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time. I want to thank again our sponsor, Mayo Medical, who did this, and another shout out to our good friend Rick for helping to coordinate it. So Jim, we'll be listening to you, watching pass across again soon, but you're always welcome. I loved it when you said our Bulldogs. So you already got the Bulldog blue, so we're okay with that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope to see you tonight or on Thursday here on our campus. And Jim, thanks again. Really appreciate your time. Good job.
Thank you. Bless you all. I feel connected, and thank you. Great to be with my Bulldogs. Wish you all the best. Coach Brown, Mike, all the best, both of you, the rest of the season. Janet, David, we're going to see everybody in Greenville, South Carolina down the road.
All right, we're counting.
Go Bulldogs.
Thank you. Go Bulldogs. Thank you.
Go Bulldogs. See you guys.